In direct response to America's threats, Iran fired its hypersonic ballistic missiles carrying over a ton of explosives, each directly at military targets across central Israel. Fattah missiles reaching Mach 15 on re-entry and Khorram-Shar ballistic missiles armed with cluster munitions broke through Israel's multi-layered missile defense network. This was the 37th wave of Operation True Promise 4, the single longest and heaviest attack Iran has launched since this war began. 3 continuous hours of sustained fire while American media was still claiming Iranian strikes had dropped 90%. This conflict just entered a new phase. Over the next few minutes, you'll see what the Western media has been keeping from you and where Iran's new strategy is leading the war next. Here's what we know. Last night, on the 10th of March, Iran deployed every tier of its missile arsenal simultaneously. The Khorram carries between 1,500 and 1,800 kilos of explosives. It traces its lineage to North Korean Hwasong-10 technology transferred in the 2000s and uses hypergolic liquid fuel, meaning it can sit loaded on a launcher for extended periods ready to fire within 12 to 15 minutes. That matters because it shrinks the window for preemptive strikes to almost nothing. The F-01 uses a maneuverable re-entry vehicle that shifts course during its terminal descent. Iran claims the FOD-2 goes further, carrying a hypersonic glide vehicle that adjusts trajectory during mid-course flight. Both are designed to arrive faster and less predictably than anything Israel's defense systems were built to track. And earlier that same day, waves 35 and 36 had already mixed in the K-Bar, Shechen, the Qadr, and the Imad. That is not one weapon getting through. That is 5 different missile systems fired in overlapping waves across a single 12-hour period, each one calibrated to stress a different layer of the defense network. Before we continue, thanks a lot for tuning in. Your support is what keeps this show going, and I appreciate you watching. As always, pleasure. Make sure to subscribe and like the video so I can keep bringing you these critical updates. Iran's new wave of attacks is not the behavior of an arsenal in collapse. That is a force demonstrating layered capability. The IRGC stated the 37th wave struck the Hayela Satellite Communication Center south of Tel Aviv for the second time in this conflict. They also reported hitting military positions in Be'er Yaakov near Tel Aviv, targets in West Jerusalem and Haifa, American positions in Erbil in Iraqi Kurdistan, and the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain. Iran additionally claimed it targeted the USS Abraham Lincoln carrier and an American destroyer in the Indian Ocean. Those claims remain unverified by independent sources. What is verified is what the IDF confirmed from its own end, and that confirmation is what changes the entire picture. On March the 10th, the Israeli Defense Forces held a press briefing and disclosed something that reframes this entire conflict. Approximately 50% of all ballistic missiles launched by Iran at Israel since February the 28th carried cluster bomb warheads, not conventional unitary warheads. Cluster munitions, weapons that do not detonate as a single explosion. Instead, they released dozens of smaller submunitions, each packed with several kilograms of explosives scattering across a radius of up to 10 kilometers. The IDF stated, Iran has been firing cluster-armed missiles at Israel almost daily since the war started. The Foundation for Defense of Democracies confirmed this in an analysis published on March the 11th, noting that with Iran's launcher fleet being degraded by strikes, the shift to cluster warheads is a deliberate adaptation to extract maximum damage from each individual missile that gets through. Most people assume interception means the threat is neutralized. In reality, cluster munitions break that logic entirely. Israel's Arrow system, David's Sling, the Iron Dome, they are all engineered to track and destroy a single re-entry vehicle on a calculable arc. A cluster warhead is designed to fragment. If the interceptor reaches the missile before it disperses, the threat is contained. But if the warhead separates at altitude, which is what these weapons are designed to do, the submunitions scatter across kilometers before any interceptor can engage them individually. One missile becomes dozens of independent projectiles, and there is a second problem that rarely gets discussed. Even when a cluster-armed missile is intercepted, the force of the interception can still rupture the casing and spread the bomblets outward. The defense system operates on binary math. Hit or miss, cluster ordnance operates on distribution. One warhead, 20 to 24 bomb bullets, and a 5-meter radius of a dispersal. The evidence on the ground confirms this. In Yehud, just outside Tel Aviv, 2 construction workers were killed and a third critically wounded by submunitions from a single cluster-armed missile. They were outdoors. They never reached a shelter. First responders near Beit Shemesh described arriving at multiple overlapping blast scenes only meters apart, treating casualties simultaneously across a scattered impact zone. More than 100 countries have signed the Convention on Cluster Munitions, banning these weapons because of their indiscriminate nature and the unexploded ordnance they leave behind for years. Iran is not a signatory, neither is Israel, neither is the United States. Stay with me because the interception problem is only one dimension. The second is what Iran has been doing to the systems that are supposed to make interception possible in the first place. On March the 11th, the New York Times published an analysis based on commercial satellite imagery, verified video footage, and official statements. That analysis identified at least 17 American military and other facilities damaged by Iranian strikes across the Gulf region. 11 of those are U.S. military installations. The sites include Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, Ali Al Salam Air Base and Camp Waring in Kuwait, and the 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain. Several were struck more than once. Satellite images show damage to reduns, satellite dishes, and structures adjacent to THAAD TPY-2 radar systems. The tracking radars that coordinate ballistic missile interception across the entire region near Al Ruwais in the United Arab Emirates. Satellite imagery captured structural damage immediately adjacent to where an ATPY-2 system was positioned. If damage affected radar, support, or communications, it could have reduced detection and coordination, but the full operational effect has not been publicly confirmed. Senior U.S. defense officials told The Times that Iran adapted its targeting strategy since the start of the conflict to focus specifically on American vulnerabilities. The interceptors and air defense systems meant to protect U.S. forces and assets. The Times reported that Iran's ability to damage these facilities, and this is the critical phrase, defied expectations in the Trump administration. That is not neutral language. Defied expectations means the planning assumptions were wrong. It means the pre-war intelligence assessment underestimated what Iran could reach and what it could damage. The Pentagon itself admitted it does not have a complete picture of all Iranian launchers still operational. Damage to the 5th Fleet headquarters alone was estimated at roughly $200 million. At Ali Salam, at least 6 structures tied to satellite communications infrastructure were destroyed or damaged. Now connect the sequence. Iran neutralized or degraded early warning radars in previous waves. Then it struck the Hayela satellite communications relay south of Tel Aviv twice. Then it hit the aid tracking radars and comms infrastructure across the Gulf. The pattern is systematic. Radars first, communications second. Then the heavy warheads arrive into a detection environment that can no longer see them coming or coordinate the response. The Khorram Shah reaches Mach 16 outside the atmosphere and Mach 8 during re-entry. If the tracking radar feeding your interceptor battery is offline, speed becomes academic. You're not shooting at what you cannot acquire. The Israeli side of the counterstrike is equally intense, and it is equally worth interrogating. On March the 10th, the Israeli Air Force struck regime headquarters in Thron and Trez, where soldiers and security personnel were gathered. Targets included a Special Forces headquarters, an IRGC compound, a ballistic missile launch coordination center, a security police facility, and a base compound. Dozens of jets delivered over 170 munitions across Tehran, Isfahan, and Shiraz. The IDF also confirmed targeting nuclear laboratories in Tran, some of which had been struck previously during the 12-day war in June 2025. Israel says it has struck hundreds of military and government-linked targets since the war began. In a single engagement, IDF surveillance detected a missile crew in western Iran preparing to launch. A drone destroyed the armed launcher minutes before it could fire. Simultaneously, the United States destroyed 16 Iranian mine-laying vessels near the Strait of Hormuz, a preemptive operation triggered by intelligence indicating Iran intended to deploy naval mines in the waterway, about 20% of global oil transits that choke point. Maersk and other major shipping firms suspended or rerouted key sailings as spies as the conflict-endangered transit through the Strait of Hormuz. And there's a second front that matters here. Hezbollah entered the war on March 2, launching attacks from Lebanon that opened an additional front against Israel. Israel responded with extensive strikes on Hezbollah infrastructure in Lebanon, including targets in Beirut's Dahir district and Hezbollah-linked financial assets. The cumulative toll on the Israeli side as of March the 10th sourced from the Alma Research and Education C Center's daily report. 14 civilians killed, 2,339 injured to varying degrees. In one 24-hour period alone, 2 were killed in the Tel Aviv area, and approximately 200 were wounded. More than 3,000 residents have been displaced by direct hits and falling interception debris. The deadliest single event remains the March the 1st strike on Beit Shemesh, where an Iranian missile penetrated a communal bomb shelter beneath a synagogue, killing 9 people, including 3 teenage siblings. 2 interceptors had been fired at that missile. Both failed to destroy it. The shelter roof collapsed. Now recall the official narrative 4 days before Wave 37. Caroline Leavitt strikes down 90%. Trump on March the 10th. Over 5,000 targets destroyed. 80 to 90% of launchers eliminated. Israeli broadcaster Can 11 reported the daily missile count falling from roughly 90 on day 1 to 65 on day 2 to 25 on day 3 to 20 on day 4. By day 6, the White House presented the decline as proof the campaign was working. By day 10, multiple analysts credited joint suppression efforts with eliminating as many as 75% of Iran's operational launcher fleet. Most people look at a falling launch rate and see a weakening enemy. In reality, the Con 11 data reveals something the headline number conceals. While the volume of launches dropped, the missiles themselves got bigger and more capable with each successive wave. Iran was not running out. It was sequencing volume first to saturate defenses and expose detection gaps. Heavy warheads later into a degraded detection environment. Wave 37 is the endpoint of that sequence. 3 hours class payloads, FTA hypersonics, cluster munitions across central Israel. Multiple theaters hit simultaneously. The IDF assessed at the start of this war that Iran possessed approximately 2,500 ballistic missiles and was accelerating production at dozens per month. Before 2026, Iran had been working to expand its stockpile from roughly 3,000 toward a target of 8,000 within 2 years. During the 12-day war in June 2025, Israel destroyed hundreds of missiles and strikes and disrupted production of 2,500 more by targeting manufacturing sites. Iran rebuilt the morning after Wave 37. IDF Home Command Chief Major General Shay Clapper addressed the country from northern Israel. His words, "More difficult days are expected. Schools remain closed and gathering restrictions stayed in place pending further assessment. That is not the posture of a military that believes its adversary is spent. Both governments claim escalation dominance." And the most devastating barrage of this entire war landed 4 days after the White House told the world the threat was 90% gone. The gap between those two realities is not a reporting error. It is the war itself. And neither side has a theory for ending it that matches the situation actually unfolding on the ground. Thanks a lot for watching. I really appreciate your support. Join the discussion in the comments beyond below. Let me know your thoughts. Who do you think is winning the war? Do you think the war is getting out of hand? Let me know. And please subscribe and like the video if you want to stay updated. And click the video on the screen to see another. I'll see you soon.